I'm going to divide my presentation in maybe 2 or 3 sections. First, I'm going to show you the dashboard and some of the options under the system status menu. And then I'm going to go to the PBX, showing you how to create extensions, how to create trunks, call routing in and out, and some of the features like IVR, ring groups, or probably video, conference rooms. So dashboard. Now in this framework, you can see not only the CPU, memory, status, but also in a graphical way, on demand, you can see the space that is available. And it's very important in case you're using the local storage for your call recording, for example. If you keep a look at the local flash availability, then you can see if you're running out of space. We have other options that I'm going to show you today, how to notify you when your media is getting full by your recordings. So you are notified, so you can change or add more external media. The UCM, as Phil mentioned before, it comes with a USB and an SD port, so you can add external media, like for example a USB stick, an SD card, or even a NAS drive through the USB port. On this dashboard, if I would have a USB connected, then I can see the USB space availability, same for the SD card down here. And as I mentioned before, the resources. Going below, from the PBX, obviously you can see the system uptime, how many active calls are, and how many extensions are registered, how many conference rooms, call queues, parking lots, everything in one shot. Also at the bottom you have the all the security options, just to show you if they are enabled or disabled. In my case, for example, I'm in a very safe network. Everything here we're using Grandstream router and access points, so we are super secure. So my PBX don't have any of the security options enabled. If you would have a UCM connected directly to your modem, then definitely you need to enable all these options that the PBX support. The one that I highly recommend always is the fail to ban. It's an application that we added. It's a Linux application that is being out there for a while. We just simply added into the PBX. That one will protect you for SIP attacks. People, scanning the network and fishing for vulnerable PBXs. If you enable this option, that will take care of that. Interfaces. So same as I showed you before, you can see what is connected or not. Very important for remote administration. Most of the time you're going to be administrating your PBX. You may not be on site, so it'll be nice for you to know what is connected on the back of the PBX and what is not. Obviously from this graph you can see that nothing is connected except the network interface. And finally, your trunks. So you want to see how many trunks you have configured, how many trunks are available, and how many are not available. All right, moving down to the next option, system information. Obviously, you just get an idea of what firmware version, what hardware, what MAC address, the uptime. You can gather that information from this menu. As for active calls, this is a nice graphical way that you can see how many calls are active. You're going to see in an icon what extension is being used, what number they're calling, what trunk is being used, and most important, the time that the call is being up. From the network status, typically network information like your IP addresses, ports available, or in listening mode, etc. All right, now for extensions. So obviously the first thing you have to do when configuring your phone system is creating extensions. As Phil mentioned, the PBX, our UCM supports zero config, which is a sort of like a plug and play option. Basically, upon detecting any Grandstream phone in the network, the Grandstream PBX is going to show you the phones, and then you right click into it, and then you're going to assign an extension. Obviously, before doing that, you need to create a batch of extensions. Let's say that you're installing a 20-25 seat office, then you go to your extensions, click on the Add button, and then you have an option, the first option, that you can select what protocol. As you know, Grandstream supports SIP only. Grandstream is a SIP only company, and however, this is a PBX that is running on Active. So as you know, Active also supports IAX. And then obviously in this section, you enable or select the batch. So typically you're going to create a batch of 5, 10, 20, whatever extension you want to create. Typically you leave everything by default. You go down, just kind of review everything. And I'm going to explain each option later on. But then when you click Save, actually, let's add 5 more extensions. Say yeah. And now you're going to see all the extensions created right here. So now this UCM has 5 new extensions. If you go to the Edit button, typically you enter the caller ID information. So if you want to leave it blank, obviously the caller ID is going to be the same extension number, but you can customize that. Most important is the permission level. So when you create your trunks, you're going to assign permission levels to your trunks, and not only the trunk, but specifically the call routing. Outbound call, for example. Then you're going to assign a pattern on your trunks or in your call routing. That call routing is going to have a permission. So the permission is going to match with the permission level on the extension. That's why we have this option for you to select from internal, which is an extension when you want to make extension to extension call, for example. Then you go all the way up to local, national, and international. So if you want a particular extension not allowed to make international calls, but only domestic calls, then you select the national permission level. Then when you create your outbound routes, you're going to say that that route allows international or not. I'll show you that when we get to that point. The C password, highly recommended. Keep it as default. The UCM has an algorithm that generates a very complex password, not easy to guess. You can always change it, but if you enter something easy to remember, like 1, 2, 3, 4, it will warn you right away that this is not a good password. Voicemail, and most important, the user settings, name, first name and last, and the email address. Very important, because this particular extension that we're configuring must have an email address, because when receiving voicemails, those voicemails are going to be converted into WAV file and send it to the email that you enter here. Faxes, for example, same thing. They're going to be converted into PDF and then forwarded as PDF attachment to the email that you enter here. And other features more that the UCM has to send emails to the users. The UCM is email ready. So basically, by using an MTA or non-authentication method, the UCM can send emails right away. However, it also has an option that you can configure your own email client in case you want to add some authentication and security. Okay, that's pretty much it. I mean, we have more options like the media. You can select what codec to use, what features. The follow me, you also configure it in this menu. We used to have the follow me in a separate menu, but now we change it to the same extension menu. So once you have your extensions created, let me show you the zero config. Go to the last option, value added features. We have the zero config down here, and it looks like I don't have any phone connected right now, but eventually all the phones are going to start popping up right in this menu. At the end, you have the options. You click edit, assign an extension, and it will be provisioned with that particular extension right away. Okay. In the same zero config, we have menus of settings, like for example, global policy, global template, model template. But before showing you that, let me talk about the 3 ways that you can configure or zero config your extensions. So as I showed you before, the default is by you creating extensions, then going to zero config and assign extension to each particular phone. However, you can enable other options that we call it enable automatic. When you turn this on, basically it's more transparent for you. You don't need to do anything, just enable this option, go to the office, start connecting the phones, and then the UCM is going to start assigning extensions randomly, by order. You're going to have a range. Let me show you down here. You have a range, in this case, it's from 5,000 to 6,300. You can always change that to your customer needs, and as soon as the phones start popping up or being detected by the UCM will automatically assign extensions in numerical order. So you don't need to worry about that. That's a good option for a brand new office that you don't care much about what extension everyone's going to have. However, we also have another option. I really like this one. It's called Enable Pick Extension. Again, the range is this, but you can always change it to any range that you prefer. Basically, this is a good option when you have an existing deployment. Let's say that you're replacing a customer that has an analog PBX, for example. They already have their extension numbers. So you enable this option, take the phones with you, go to the offices or cubicles. You know that that cubicle, for example, used to have extension 1020, for example. Then when you connect your Grandstream phone, you're going to wait for the phone to reboot, and then from the phone, you're going to select extension 1020, and then the phone gets provisioned. So again, this is something that you need to work, remember, by adapting the range and enabling this option. And then at the bottom, I think we have a sort of like extension period of time. So if the installation is going to take you a couple hours, you enter 2 hours here, and then that option is going to be available within this period of time. So by the following day, when employees come, they're not going to see the peak extension option on the phones. And we recently added this whitelist. So remember, UCM supports VPN. You can have multiple VLANs within your network, and sometimes if the UCM is in one VLAN, but some of the phones are in a different VLAN, those phones can now be detected if you enter the subnet in the whitelist option. All right. Now, going back to zero config, I told you that we have the global policy, global template, and model template. So typically, you assign an extension from the zero config, right? When the phone is detected, you assign an extension to that particular phone and some minor settings. If you have a global setting that you want to apply to every single phone in the office, instead of you going or enabling that setting one by one on each phone, then what you do is you go to global policy, find that setting that you want to change, language, for example, change it to something else, and then every single phone will be taking that setting automatically. The only thing you have to do is from the zero config is assigning an extension. So whatever is the global policy will apply to every single phone detected. However, for the global template that we have in the next option is that, yes, so you can create templates. So if you have a large deployment with the warehouse that has different type of phones using PA, for example, paging, but you also have all the group of phones in the main office that you don't require paging, for example, then you can create a template that has the paging option enabled. Then when you are creating your phone's extension from the zero config, besides selecting the extension, now you can select that template that you created previously with the paging settings enabled. Paging is an example, but could be anything that you want, from changing ringtone, for example, speaker volume, things like that. Codec, for example, you can customize any setting from one of these options. And then the model template is a little more easier for you. So basically, you're going to create a model. Let's say that you have a deployment with Grandstream GXP 2100, and also you have handy tones or ATAs. So you want to apply a specific setting for every single ATA in the office, but that doesn't apply to your GXP phones. So in order to do that, then you create your model template, select ATA, handy tone 801 as an example. Then you create your setting there, and then every time that the UCM detects handy tone 801, it will push the settings that you have in this template automatically. And lastly, you have this option that you can update the template package. So you may have a firmware on the UCM. You like that firmware, time passes, few months, few years, for example, there's no security issues important to apply to the UCM, so you are okay with this particular firmware, you don't want to update it. However, you buy new phones, and those new phones may not be included in the zero config because you have an old firmware. So instead of updating the firmware, you basically come to this option, model update. It will connect to Grandstream server. It's going to show you all the Grandstream phones, and then let's say that you have a Grandstream 3200 that you want to be part of the zero config, but it's not showing in your zero config. Then you basically click download and include that particular package onto the UCM. All right, so we have extensions. I'll show you how to use the zero config, and now let's talk about the trunks. I believe this is a UCM 6102, meaning with 2 FXO ports. You can have from 2, 4, or 8 FXO ports, unless you have the 6116, which comes with 16 FXO ports. So let's add analog trunks. Let's create a couple of trunks. You need to select the trunks here, add a name, and basically keep everything as default. All the settings, well, let's create it now. In the future, if you are having issues, for example, caller ID not being detected, for example, calls not being dropped when the PSTN party hangs up, then you can do some, troubleshooting. These are the options that you need to change. For call disconnection, you have the threshold that you can change. For caller ID, you can change it in this menu, but most of the time you don't know the settings. You don't know what is supported by your telco provider. So that's why we have the auto detect option down here. You click the auto detect. Remember, this UCM has 2 FXO ports. So the source, let's keep it as the port FXO number 1. And the destination, let's enter option of port number 2. Then you enter the phone number of port number 2. Basically, when you click detect, FXO is going to open. It's going to dial this number that you enter here, which is FXO2. So basically, it's going to make a loop call. Then the UCM is going to start sending some signals to auto detect the settings. After this is done, it's going to show you what was detected, and then an option to apply the settings or not. All right, now we have a analog trunk. How about zip trunks? So this is where you add your zip trunks. We name it VoIP trunks because you can add not only a zip trunk provider, but you can also add another device, like another UCM, for example, like another FXO gateway, or maybe a PRI gateway that you purchase through a third party. FXO gateways, we make those gateways, we call them DXW 4104 or 4108. You can increase your FXO capability by adding more FXO gateways. So then you can add them in this menu. But typically it's a zip trunk provider. As you know, they use two different methods to authenticate, by using your own IP address or by using a registration. Today, I highly recommend using pure zip trunk. So the service provider is going to be authenticating your PBX based on the IP address. So it's more difficult for someone to gain access to your zip trunk. All right, so then you enter the name. Into the IP address of your provider. Then we have different options. Keep original caller ID. This is for in and outbound calls. So a call that comes in, and then at the same time it's going to be forwarded back. Typically for follow me, someone calling your extension, and then and then you transfer it back to a number on the PSTN side through the zip trunk provider. So sometimes you want to have either when receiving the call on your PSTN, let's say your cell phone. So again, a good example. Someone calls you, a customer calls you to your extension, then you forward it to your cell phone. So the call comes in, then it's forwarded back to the zip trunk to your cell phone. Your cell phone rings, and then what caller ID you want to see there, depending on your needs. If you keep it like it is, this option in blank, then you're going to see the office phone number. However, if you turn that on, then you're going to receive the original caller ID, meaning the customer that is calling you at your extension. Keep trunk caller ID, so also you can play with the caller ID. They said if you're making outbound calls through this trunk, then obviously the caller ID of your extension is going to be kept, it's going to be sent to the zip trunk, unless you want to enable this option. Then the trunk caller ID is going to be whatever name you enter as the trunk name. Then right here below you enter more information about caller ID and name. My bad. So when you enable this option right here, outbound calls will be presenting the information that you have in these two fields. And every single option or trunks, you always have an option to record. How to record? So if you enable this option, everything going out or in through this trunk will be recorded. All right. So let's save it. Now we have a zip trunk. Sometimes you may have multiple DIDs with your zip provider. Sometimes your customer has an office with multiple group of employees. So if you want to make an outbound call, but showing a particular DID on your outbound calls, for example, you have a support group. So when they make an outbound call, they want always to show a particular caller ID when they make it an outbound call. But if you have a sales team that when they make an outbound call, they want to show a different caller ID. So you go to the DoD and then you create your groups. For example, you purchase with your zip trunk provider 10 DIDs, for example. One of them is this one. So you want to say, you know, when I call from this extension and this one only, basically you move them to the right and then you save it. So when these three extensions, 1000, 1001, and 2, when they make an outbound call, they're going to be using this number as their DID. And then you can create another group, with a different DID. Then you select this one, let's say this one. So when these two extensions make an outbound call, then the UCM is going to be sending this number as part of the DID. Not the caller ID, don't get confused, as part of the DID. Okay. All right. So we have analog trunk, we have VoIP trunk, and how about call routing, outbound and inbound? So before doing an outbound or inbound, we need to have some destinations, right, to send the calls for inbounds. So let me jump this part quickly, and let me create an IVR, probably a ring group, so we have something to send the calls to. So IVR, obviously, as Phil mentioned, we support IVRs. You can upload fully customizable, by the way. You can upload your professional recordings, or maybe you want to upload something from your phone. There's an option that you can basically press a button, enter your extension number, your phone rings, you pick it up, and then you can start talking. That's going to be a prompt that you're going to save into the PBX. Then eventually, from different options, you can use those recordings. As an example, we are here in an IVR. So we have this option right here, prompt. So when hitting the IVR, you're going to play, let me show you. Actually, this is by default. It comes with only a welcome message by default. When you go to your prompt menu, this is where you upload your recordings. So eventually when you click on this drop-down menu, you're going to have all your recordings that you can choose from. Format is explicitly mentioned in that particular menu, also in the user manual, but basically we support everything from WAV, MP3, ULO, ALO, GSM, multiple formats, but it must be a file less than 5 megs, and believe just that, following the format and less than 5 megs. At the end, the UCM is going to convert it into WAV, by the way, so there's going to be some conversion internally. And then at the top, I want to show you that you have options that once the caller hits the IVR while listening to the prompt, they can also start dialing specific extensions that belongs to a conference bridge, call queue, or a ring group, a paging group, for example. So if you keep it as default, meaning everything is not selected, they can only dial extensions from the IVR. But depending on the case, you may want to enable all of the options. And then you have your typical key pressing event. So obviously press 1 for X. So let's send, when you press 1 in your recording, you're going to say press 1 for sales, for example. Then you want to send it to a particular extension. Press 2 for all the options. So basically you have full control of any destination. From extensions, dial by name, you can send it to a ring group, voicemail group. I mean, you have even to another IVR. So you have full control of that. So for demonstration purpose, just add anything. Now we have an IVR with a welcome message, And how about creating a, how about ring group? Very popular. You can have a group of extensions that are going to ring simultaneously, or there are different strategies. I'll show you. So first you name it, then you select your extension that are going to be part of the ring group. Move it to the right. Go to the bottom. If you have a second UCM peer, let's say this UCM that I'm showing you is the one on your main office, headquarters. Then you have another UCM in one of your branches. So we can peer or synchronize the phone books from both UCMs. There's a specific menu for that. You go to LDAP, and then you're going to enable some options, point both UCMs, and then the extensions on the remote UCMs are going to be synchronized with the main UCM, and then you're going to see here extensions that belong to a remote UCM. And those extensions can also be part of the ring group. And then you have the different strategies, as I mentioned. So typically, you have the ring in order, one at a time, or ring simultaneously. While ringing, you can also customize the ring back. So you can play a music, you can play a message, for example, typical, please wait until the next available representative, or you can even play a ring back only. And also you can upload, you can customize it, go to prompts, upload something, and then it's going to show in this list. You can record everything that is going to a ring group by selecting this option. And then in the event that nobody is answering, then you can also send a call to another destination. Supervisor's extension, for example. Okay? All right, so we have an IVR, we have a ring group. Now let's do the call routing. Let's do outbound route first. All right, just add a name. Okay, bear with me. Okay. All right. So this is an outbound route. Typically, you can call it national, for example. So you're going to enter your typical numbers to dial domestic or national calls. Here in the U.S., in North America, we use 10-digit numbers. So a typical pattern is simply a 10 X's. However, we can, if you check the tooltip right here, we support multiple wildcards and option numbers or letters to, for example, capital N is very typical. It's digits from 2 through 9, and then the X is any digit from 0 to 9. So here in the U.S., typically you do capital N, and then you have a typical 10-digit number in the U.S. or North America. Then below, you select where do you want to send the calls that are using that particular pattern. So you enable the destination, As you know, we have two trunks, analog and SIP trunk. You can select any trunk. And then more at the bottom, you have your failovers. What about your two FXO lines are busy? Then you can say, let me send the calls failover to my next trunk, which is my SIP trunk provider. Okay, save it. Now, any number, any 10-digit number that is going to be matched with this rule will be sent to your analog trunk first and fail over to your SIP trunk after. Then we have some settings that may apply for some countries. PIN, for example, if you add a PIN number here, then every time that you're making an outbound call to this particular, that this rule is taking that call, then the system is going to prompt you to enter a PIN number. Very useful for international calls, for example. Call duration, for example, international also. If you enter a call duration time, then when reaching that time, the UCM is going to warn the user a few seconds before, and then the call is going to be dropped. All right. We have an outbound call for domestics. How about let's do an international call pattern. All right, typically you enter the international access code. Here in the US, we use 011. So anything beginning with 011, I enter a dot, meaning that at least the first digit must be 011, and then the rest could be anything. So by entering this pattern, I'm going to enter a PIN, by the way, and then as my destination trunk, I'm going to use my SIP trunk. And I don't want to do failovers because typically you don't use analog lines for international calls. All right. Very easy. So you can be more creative. You can add patterns for 911 calls, for 411 calls, for, even some cities still in North America, they use 7-digit dialing. Even to call another UCM that is using a 4-digit extension, for example, you can enter that here. Now for inbound routes, so you select first, or let me show you. You first select what trunk you want to select the inbound route. Let's do analog first. You click on add. You have on the left-hand side is grayed out. Typically it's the DID. That doesn't apply for analog lines, of course. Then on the right-hand side, you can leave it blank. Typically you leave it blank, but you can also enter a caller ID. So for example, if you have your cell phone, when you call the office, every time that you call, you want the UCM to transfer the call immediately to your extension. Or maybe prompt you with a dial tone, what we call DISA, so then you can start making outbound calls. So, you can add multiple numbers here, etc. And then the UCM is going to detect, look for the caller ID, and when it matches, then it's going to apply the settings down here. So in this case, anything that is coming, I'm going to keep it blank, anything that is coming through my analog lines, I am going to send it to my IVR, right? You also have some time conditions. Only from Monday to Friday, 8 to 6 p.m., send it to the main IVR, for example. And then after hours, send it to my second IVR, that is my off hours IVR. Okay. Now let's do a inbound route coming from my SIP trunk. So in this case, Yeah, this is the beauty of zip, that you can manipulate based on the DIDs. If you have, as a matter of fact, the UCM is well used on a multi-tenancy environment, even that is not market as a multi-tenancy PBX. Our UCM is so flexible that you can still use it for a couple, maybe 2 or 3 companies. Okay, so let's say that you purchase 10, 20 DIDs with your SIP provider, and then you know that 5 DIDs belong to one company. Other DIDs belong to another company. So this is how you can do the routing. So in the pattern, you enter all the DIDs that belong to all the DIDs that you want. So an incoming call that the user dialed one of these 3 DIDs, the call will be sent to the IVR of company A, for example. And then you save it, create another rule, add more DIDs, and then the call is going to be sent to another IVR or another ring group or another extension. It's up to you. What matters is that we support all these destinations. So basically anything in the UCM, the calls can be routed to anything in the UCM. Or simply keep it blank. You know, basically anything that is coming from this particular trunk, I'm going to send it to, as a matter of fact, you always need to enter something, a dot, for example. Remember, check the tooltips. And the dot means any digit. It's a wildcard, matching 1 or more characters. So just enter a dot. Some people, they do is X and a dot, which is the same. Caller ID, same thing as an electron that I showed you before. You can still customize that based on your caller ID. And send the calls to your favorite destination. All right. So, let's see, we have extensions called routing, inbound, IVR, ring group, and probably I'm gonna jump into some of the settings that I've been mentioning in my presentation. Remember that I said that you can customize your music on hold. This is the menu where you can upload your recordings. You create a class first. This class, the one that comes by default, we name it default. So then you have all these 5, 6 recordings. If you go to if you edit the class, you're gonna see that the default is the sort is random. So you have a couple options, either random or alphabetical. So basically based on the name of the recording, if you select alphabetic, then it's going to play it alphabetically. Or you can create your own class, enter a name, enter a sort, and then you start uploading your recordings. You select your new class, and then you click the upload button. I think when you do this, you're going to see that it must, okay, that's the other condition. So it must be an 8 kilohertz mono music file with no more than 5 megs. The UCM will always transcode the recording into a WAV format. So even if you do a nice recording on MP3 that has high resolution or quality, you upload it to the UCM, but we're going to decode it to a WAV format. And then in your voice prompt, same thing as I said before, for example, the IVR. So you want to upload your recordings, you go to custom prompt, and then you have multiple ways to upload your recordings. the first one, basically you enter a name, enter your extension, and then when you click record, this extension 1000 is going to ring, you pick it up, you hear some message, and then you start recording. Then as soon as you hang up, that recording is going to show up right here. Or you can upload it. So you have your nice recording, professional recording, you upload it from this menu. This is a little more complex. I mean, the format is a little more specific. So it's telling you about, it must be a PCM encoded 16 bits, 8000 mono, with the following format: MP3, WAV, RAW, ULO, etc. Okay. And of course, once you have all your recording, you can download it for backup purpose, for example. On the same menu, we have the system prompt. So the system prompt, comes in different languages. English, of course, by default, but then you can upload any language. If you click on the check prompt list, the UCM is going to connect to Grandstream server. It's going to show you all the prompts, all the languages available. You basically look for the one that you are interested. Spanish, for example, you click the download button. The prompt file being downloaded, and then you have a new language. Remember, this is the system prompt, meaning when you're making an outbound call, for example, and there are no trunks available, the system is going to say, all circuits are busy. These type of messages are in the language that you select. Because as you know, IVRs, you customize that yourself. All right. Then I wanted also to show you some setting from the system setting. For security, the UCM by default has what we call a redirect option. So when you type the IP address of the UCM, even though the UCM is only listening on HTTPS, as a matter of fact, it's configurable. You can also change it to something else, or HTTP. But because it's listening on HTTPS, but if you type only the IP address, which is using port 80, then the UCM automatically is going to reroute it or redirect to HTTPS and the port that you have here, which is 8089. I believe for security reasons, you need to turn this option off, disable it. If I do that, then when typing the IP of my UCM, I must enter, the whole string, HTTPS, IP address, and the port number at the end. Also, it's recommended to change the port number. Everyone knows that Grandstream default port number is 8089, so you want to change that something else. And we added also a TLS private key and certificate, so the browser doesn't show you up left corner that it's not a secure HTTPS. Then on the security settings, we have different options that you can turn on. We call it static defense, dynamic defense. So any of these two options are okay. I like the static defense better, so you can block anything. I mean, it's like a firewall. You create a rule, you can name it drop, for example. You have different actions from accept, reject, or drop. And then what type of interface, the in or out traffic, what interface, the WAN, LAN, or both, let's say WAN. And then we have presets of services, HTTPS, SSH, etc. Or you can even customize it. Typically, if you have UCM exposed to the public network, you gotta enable this option. If you have maybe one SIP trunk provider only and you don't have remote extensions, then you can basically create a rule that says drop every single packet coming from outside. You save it, and then you create another rule that you're gonna allow traffic from my SIG-TRON provider only, and then you're going to enter the IP address. Okay? Very, very basic firewall rules. And I mentioned about the fail to ban. It's not enabled by default. Just turn it on here, and that's it, and save it. As I said before, by turning this on, the UCM, the fail to ban is protecting or listening, waiting for suspicious packets, repeated packets within a few milliseconds to recognize that this is a malicious attempt. So it is going to ban the IP address right away for this period of time that you enter here. And obviously you can whitelist your trusted people out there. Okay? All right. For users, by default, you have the admin user. That this one comes with super admin privilege. You can change the password anytime. But very important, you need to enter an email address. So in case you forget the admin password, if you don't have the password, you cannot access the UCM. So there's an option in the login page, something like forgot your password. When you click there, the UCM is going to send you a code to your email address. So you better make sure that you enter your email right here. That's basically the first thing you have to do when enabling a UCM. And then as you create extensions, they will automatically add a user for that extension, because your users, the extension user, they have access to the UCM web interface also. So for example, if you log in with extension 1000, you're going to be able to see the settings pertaining to you as a user. For example, transfer calls, call forwarding. You can see your voicemails. You can download it from the web. You can see your faxes. Also, you can download the PDF file from the portal. And typical settings that apply to you as a user only. And I just want to jump to the backup. This is a nice option. You need to enable this the first time that you're installing. Basically, we have multiple ways of doing the backup. Manually, which you come here, select what you want to back up. Probably you want to select all. And then you're going to say, okay, where am I sending my backup? If you have an external media, like a USB stick, for example, you select that here. Click on backup. You can even rename or specify the name. You click backup, and then it's going to do the backup for you. Right now, if you keep it in local, the backup is going to stay locally. But we added this option, we call it regular backups. By enabling this, you can set up a remote FTP server. You select what you want to back up. You select even not only an FTP server, but again, if you have an storage, an external media, it's going to show here. Then at the bottom, you have well, in this case, if you select FTP server, you have the information about that particular FTP server, like the account name, username, password, and the server IP address. So when you save it, then the UCM is going to start sending the backups to your server. I don't see why I cannot see below. Typically, you have the time that you want the backups to happen, like once a week, on Fridays, for example, or on Sunday night, or once a month. Probably it's my browser that's not showing that. And this is where you upgrade the firmware. But let me jump into the CDRs. We added not too long ago an API. So basically, from the CDR, you can see all the call detail recordings. This is a brand new UCM. I don't have any data, but from the web interface, you can see all of your recordings. You have a button that you can download it. They're going to be downloaded as a CSV file, so then you can import to your Excel, for example, or reporting software, so you can, have a better picture of the call details. You can also go to the recording files, and then they're going to be showing here. You can select individual calls, download them, or you can select a batch of recordings and download them to your computer. For API, we added an API that you can connect your remote billing system, for example, to check to the UCM and grab the CDRs every minute, every hour, once a day, once a week. There's a documentation on our website that explains the API commands needed. And then lastly, as value added, we talk about the zero config, and we have these three options. We call them AMI, CTI server, and CRM. So basically, for AMI, that's another. Remember, this is running on an open source PBX Asterix, right? Even that it's open source, it's not really open for the public, that you can go access the console and make some changes to the config file. So, but we have requests from customers saying, I still want to access the console to kind of get some data for troubleshooting, for example. So eventually, we have been opening some of the interfaces. As I mentioned before, the CDR API. We enable that so people can go and get the CDRs. We enable now the AMI, which is the Asterix Management Interface, so you can remote access and see some of the stuff running in the background. CTI, we added a, as you know, we are compatible. We released a software. It's a Windows-based software called CTI that you can download off our website. It's called Affinity. That software is going to connect to the Grandstream phone. So from your computer, you can interact with the phone. Click to dial, for example, the phone is going to ring. And also, we are making compatible that software with the UCM. That one is still not available on our website for the UCM. The Affinity software that we have is only connecting to your Grandstream phone. And then the CRM at the bottom, we are compatible with a couple CRMs, Sugar CRM and Salesforce. So you can connect with these CRM softwares to query the data. That's a good option. For example, if you have a CRM in your office, when you receive an incoming call based on the caller ID, the UCM is going to query the CRM, and then if the CRM replies back with some data, that information is going to be attached to the caller ID. So then when the call comes in, your phone starts ringing, and then you're going to see, for example, customer ID, address, for example, name, company name, whatever the CRM is providing. So that's why this is a good solution. All right, so I hope that I cover the basic stuff. I just wanted to give you an idea how the UCM, how flexible the UCM is, the new web interface. We also have some local trainings. Keep an eye on our website. We do a lot of training, especially on around the world. So in Europe, Latin America, North America, and in Asia. So keep an eye on our website for our local training. Hopefully there's one near you. And from these type of webinars, check also our website. We continue doing these webinars almost every week, sometimes twice or even 3 times a week. So I'm going to pass it back to Phil to give you more information and open questions, Q&A session.
Yeah.
If you have any questions.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ernesto. Yeah, and as Ernesto was mentioning, at any point in time, you can head over to Grandstream.com. There will be a events tab. Click on trainings, and you will see all of the in-person trainings that we have going on around the world. Over the last 2 or 3 years, that's become one of the big things that we do, and frankly, I feel like we make our trainings more accessible, and most of them are free as well. So if you're looking to get more of a hands-on training, the ability to ask more questions, to go through more detailed deployment examples, the in-person trainings are great options. We do them with our distributors worldwide. So go to grandstream.com, click on the events, and then click on trainings from that events tab to see all of those. All right, so the first question was about the recording. This was recorded probably by the end of the day, if not early next week. I will upload this to our YouTube page, so you can just simply check our YouTube page probably early next week for this recording. Also on our YouTube page is a variety of other training webinar recordings, previous UCM training webinar recordings, as well as networking solutions training webinars, a couple other ones that I just can't remember off the top of my head. So check our YouTube page, youtube.com/Grandstream Networks. All right, so there was a bunch of questions that came in during the webinar. I want to thank a couple of people who, Gene specifically, for doing a great job answering a lot of the questions. We love when our resellers, installers, integrators, the Grandstream community is able to help each other out. That's that's awesome to see. So I'll go through and we'll try to pull up any of the questions that may not have been answered. Yeah. Sorry, let me just go through here one at a time.
Looks like Gene did a good job.
Yeah, Gene did a good job. Do we touch on music on hold or streaming music at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. Music, yeah, we did talk about music on hold. You can upload your recordings. By default, of course, the UCM comes with about 4 to 6 recordings. Streaming, actually, I mean, the UCM doesn't have a input port on the back that you typically connect a radio or MP3 player or whatever. However,
what about via an FXS port, for example?
Yeah, we don't do that, but we do have an option that, I mean, today there are a lot of stream companies that are streaming audio music that can be used on your music on hold PBX. For example, Pandora or any, third-party company. So basically, you can enter a URL. Unfortunately, not in the UCM. It's funny because we don't support that in the UCM, but on the phone. So you go to the phone. There's a setting that it says music on hold URI. You enter that, and then when you press the hold button, the phone is going to reach out to that server, receive the RTP, and play it back as music on hold. But currently, the UCM has only the music on hold option that you can upload the recordings yourself.
Sanjay has been asking about property management, the PMS feature. Specifically, I guess one thing to point out is that everything we showed you here today was independent of that PMS feature. Do we offer any wake-up features outside of the property management software integration?
No, everything has to be through the PMS, actually.
That's what I thought.
Well, let me put it this way. I forgot to mention this one, by the way. In the value-added features, we also have the PMS, where you can interconnect your UCM with the third-party devices that can interconnect with a hotel software. So we support currently H Mobile, which is sort of like a middleware that interconnect with a bunch of softwares available in the market for hotels. By doing that, then you can have a full hotel using their own system of software, but connecting the UCM as the main PBX. Once you do that, then you have typical hotel services, like the wake-up call, for example, minibar. And if I understand correctly, you probably don't have these PMS modules, H-Mobile or Mitel. So if you don't have that, you can still create your wake-up services. So the receptionist still needs to dial or to access the web interface of the UCM, so she or he can include the settings, right, for the wake-up service.
Cool. Yeah, and I guess I should also mention that, those are the property management systems or software that we support right now. If there is a specific one that you may be using or some of your clients may be using, we are all for certifying the UCM with that. We just frankly need somebody to kind of put us in touch with the technical team at whatever the property management software you're using. But if there are additional ones that you might want to see integration with the UCM on, let us know, and we can certainly look into it. What else do we got here? Can audio recordings be stored on a USB connected drive?
Definitely, yeah. So by default, it's using the internal flash. This UCM supports 2 gigs of flash. It's not too much for recording. If you're enabling call recording through your trunk, it's going to get full quickly. So that's why you must use an external media, like a USB drive, which could be a NAS server. So by using a typical USB stick that you connect to it, they come from 1 gig, 34 gigs, 64 gigs. Currently, because we support NAT 532, then by using this type of drive, you're going to reach only up to 32 gigs. However, if you use a NAS, then there's no limitation. The limitation is on the driver side.
Cool. Moving along here. It's a pretty simple one. Ed is asking about how to connect a third-party SIP device. And you would,
okay.
I'll let you answer it, but from my side, it's the same way that you would connect a Grandstream device to the UCM or integrate it with it.
Yeah, the zero config, which is the auto detection part, is not compatible with third-party phones, only Grandstream. However, you can still manually configure your third-party phone. You go to extension, create your extensions, then retrieve the password, go to the phone, plug it in, and it will register right away. Let me go back to the recording option that
Sure.
Someone was asking before. In this menu, when you go to PBX, recording storage, unfortunately I don't have a USB connected right now, but if I do, then it's going to show at the bottom. I have my local storage, and then eventually I may have my USB. Then you have a radio button. Then you can choose where do you want your recordings to be stored, either in your local or in your USB. You may have an SD card, so you can choose that. However, by having the enable auto change, that means that, let's say that you select your USB, but when you remove it, then the UCM automatically is going to continue saving in your local drive. All right.
Do we support paging out through FXS ports?
Well, FXS is just an FXS port where typically you connect analog phone, like a fax machine, for example. But you can, definitely, if you have a paging device that is doing the off-hook automatically, and connect to a PA, then yes, it can be done. But the UCM FXS port is just an FXS that connects to a regular analog phone. We do support paging, as I mentioned before, on the SIP side. So our SIP devices, they do have a speaker. So you can configure the phones to be a paging device. So then you can page from one extension to the other one. You can create a paging group. So then you can have multiple phones to be part of that group. So when you dial that paging extension, all the phones are gonna go off hook right away and connect the audio to the speaker.
Did you touch on, I'm assuming you touched on BLF at some point in time?
Yeah, we support BLF. The UCM support event list as well. And, you know, if you have a large deployment, I would say more than 50 phones, then I recommend using event list. Event list is to customize the BLF on groups. Sometimes, you know, you have a phone with maybe 20 buttons, and then you can see the BLF status only of 20 extensions. So while using the plain BLF, the UCM is basically sending BLF status of all 100 extensions to a phone that can only see, as an example, 20 extensions. So to avoid that, then you can enable event list BLF, where the phone is going to subscribe and request BLF for some particular extensions.
Cool. Zero config works only, this is a question, zero config works only if we use the UCM as a DHCP server. And then if, based on that, if they have a different DHCP server, do you have to activate any DHCP options on the UCM?
Yes, you know the UCM supports DHCP, right? And the UCM 6202, it comes with a router. And no, actually the zero config works in different layers. One of them is DHCP, of course, but the default is basically by sending a zip message to a broadcast IP. We use also MDNS, the zip subscribe, and DHCP option 66. So you don't need to have, you can continue using your local DHCP server, and the UCM will not be using the DHCP, but these other methods that I mentioned.
How many trees, or I think different versions of IVRs, do we support?
Up to 5. So you can have up to 5 sub-IVRs. You can create almost unlimited IVRs, but sub-IVRs up to 5.
It's an interesting question that I figured I'd read out loud. Now I just lost it. Actually, never mind. Getting through them, I know there's still a couple of ones that I'm getting through, going through the chat and the Q&A at the same time.
In the meantime, let me show you a couple of menus that I didn't show. Basically, this is the feature code. You have an option that you can customize your feature codes from blind transfer, you know, cold park, etc. Everything's customizable. Voicemail access code, typically star 98, but you can change it to any code you want. And this is the event list that I mentioned before to support VLF.
Good for a question?
Yep.
For standalone fax using an ATA, is there any special programming required for that?
No, actually the ATA will be working as an extension. The only thing you have to do on the PBX, I mean, by the way, remember the ATA, if you're using a Grandstream ATA, the ATA supports already fax detection. So upon receiving a call, the ATA is kind of listening to the RTP. Upon detecting the fax tones, it's going to engage the fax protocol, which is T38. So if you are using a Grandstream ATA, you don't need to do anything on the UCM. However, you can always go to the extension of that particular ATA, and then there's a setting that says fax detection. That's in case that extension is always going to be used for faxing.
So John asked this question earlier about the ability. He's mentioning that Cisco has a feature where you can have a call on your mobile phone, soft phone app that you basically, like when you reach the office, you can put that call on hold and pick it up on your hard phone. Does Grandstream Wave support anything like that?
As a matter of fact, we're working on that option. Who made that question?
Joel.
All right, that's a good one. I like it. I received it this week only. Basically, it's about the cell phone. I mean, we support the Grandstream Wave. It comes in two versions, Android and iOS. It's free. You can download it anytime. And the UCM has a sort of like to make it a whole solution. It has some options that you can send the credentials to the Grandstream Wave, so the Grandstream Wave can get provisioned with that particular extension seamlessly. You don't need to do anything. Just click that. As a matter of fact, let me show you. Let's say that this extension, 1001, is going to be used in a GS Wave. You click here. You click on email. Then remember, when you create the extension, you added an email address, right? So then when you click the email button, the UCM is going to send an email, and then in that email, there's going to be a QR code that you can scan or upload to your GS Wave, and then GS Wave gets provisioned. Now, the question is about adding a hold button on the GS Wave. It's not supported currently, but I'm sure it will be supported soon.
Also, as I'm going through this chat, I also want to thank Dennis for doing a great job answering a lot of these questions. Question about explaining the difference between parking a call and putting it on hold, and specifically in terms of the settings of the parking area.
Yeah, probably Dennis is coming from the analog.
It's actually Gene asking that question.
Oh, Gene.
Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly.
So maybe he's coming from the analog trunks, analog PBX, sorry, or legacy PBX, where at that time, analog phone, Nortel, for example, you have an office with 5 lines, trunks, right? So in the phone, you can see all 5 buttons. So when a call comes in, button on line 1, button 1 on your phone is going to blink. You can take it, you can press it again to sort of like hold it, and then anyone in the office, the button number 1 is going to blink, so they can take the call. So coming from that legacy PBX, we also do something similar. So just to answer his question, the difference between call on hold and call park is that when you hold a call, only the phone that held the call is going to be able to retrieve it again. Okay? So you hold it, press the same button again from the same phone. However, in a call park option, it's for a group of people. So then you park a call into a particular slot or extension. Some people call it orbit, and then every single phones in the office, they're monitoring that particular orbit. When the button is blinking, they can press it. So that's kind of the difference between call on hold and call parks.
All right, looks like we're getting to the end with the questions here. Is it possible to set up a USB drive to auto erase when you're using it for recordings, for example?
Yes, we added this option not too long ago, a couple firmwares ago. Basically, you can, what is that option? Remember that we changed the web interface. There's something that we call cleaner, probably under maintenance. Cleanup, okay. Cleaner. So we added an option that you can clean, do some maintenance, cleaning your old files. We included it now, external media, right here in the next menu. So now your SD card, USB stick, whatever is connected to it, then you can create a rule that is going to clean upon reaching the threshold that you configure in the cleaner menu. For example, if you want to clean the CDRs, you turn this on and then put a timer. when, and what interval. If you want to clean every single file, enable this option here. Select what you want to clean, basic calls, conference, call recordings, or basically everything, and then enter the threshold and save it. That is going to apply to your local storage and to the external media through the USB and SD card.
Cool. Can a voicemail be automatically erased from the UCM after having it sent to email?
Erase completely automatically, no, but there's an option that we can delete or stop sending the MWI, the signal that turns on the lamp on the top right corner, upon the message being sent to your email. I understand where the question is coming from. The problem is that actually, you know what, I believe in this particular firmware, we added that option. The problem that we had in the past is that we send the email, but we never know if the email was received. So we don't want to delete an important message until someone confirms that the email was received. Because that technology doesn't help to confirm that. That's why we were not removing the recording. But I believe in the recent firmware, we added this option. So maybe we're going to continue with more questions. If I see that option, I'll share it to you.
All right. The BLF functionality or feature you're talking about earlier with 50 plus spot was event list BLF?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Gotcha.
More than 50 extension, I believe you need to use event list.
Event list.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Get any final questions you have in. Looks like I'm on what I believe to be the last one here. And this is a pretty general one, but I think it's probably worth covering. Question is, can you explain how to upgrade firmware on the UCM?
Of course. Very simple. Go to maintenance. Go to upgrade. Right, the firmware?
Yep.
And then always keep an eye on the firmware page. Check the release notes. If you something that you like, for example, you see it right in front of you, it's in big, red, bold letters. You must upgrade to firmware 14.24. But if it's a typical release, check the release notes right here, and then if you see something that you like, upgrade it. But if you see something that is not going to help you in your production device, don't upgrade. Upgrade always, there's a little risk. So this is how you do it. You basically download it from the Grandstream website, put it on your computer, then you go here, upload it by clicking this button. Sometimes, depending on how old the firmware is, in the release note, we're going to give you recommendations. Okay, sometimes you can upgrade directly from your very old firmware to the latest, or sometimes you need to go in transitions. So check the release note always before upgrading.
All right. What is the limitation of the recordings? For example, can all extensions can be recorded?
Yeah, you can record based on extension, trunk, or ring groups. Remember, IVRs. From the extension, you can say everything coming in or out through this particular extension will be recorded, or by on demand. There's an option that you can press a start code to record that piece of call only.
How do you figure out what the current firmware version that your UCM is running? I would imagine it tells you that within either the upgrade or one of those fields. I'll let you take
How do you find out what firmware you are on?
Yeah. Currently.
From system status, system information. Remember, this is a new web interface. The previous one, it was very similar, but look for the system information on the status page, and it's right here. go to check on the program version. That's the version of your system.
There you go. Do we support accessing voicemail remotely from a remote extension, or calling into your account somehow to access it remotely?
Yeah, the remote part, I believe he's talking about calling from outside, like when you call your main number, you reach the IVR. Yes, it's because the UCM is so flexible. I mean, we don't support that feature per se, but there are ways to do it. In other words, go to our website, probably check the forum, probably check the white papers that we have on the UCM section, and if you need more support, you can open a support ticket with us. But yeah, there's a way to work around it, to check your voicemail by calling from outside.
And obviously, remember, you can also have it sent to your email, so you can access it from any device that you can get an internet connection on. All right, so we're going to wrap up with that. I want to thank everybody for being here for today's webinar. As I mentioned, we did record the entire thing. I will upload it probably today, if not Monday, to our YouTube page, so you can check our YouTube page probably Monday or Tuesday for the full recording. It's youtube.com/Grandstream Networks. And as we mentioned earlier, check out the in-person trainings. These online training webinars are great tools for you to kind of learn a little bit from the comfort of your own home or office. However, the in-person trainings are a lot more in-depth, give you the ability to ask a lot more questions, to go through a lot more specific things. So definitely recommend getting to an in-person training. We're actually doing this exact same webinar, again, next Tuesday morning at 9:30 a.m. That is EDT, East Coast time here in the U.S. So exact same time as this webinar started, again, next Tuesday on our UCM series of IP PBXs if you want to join us again. If you want to recommend anybody to do that, the same email that you signed up for this one in, that one would be mentioned also. So yeah, that's it. I want to thank everybody for being with us. I know it's a busy time of year, and we always appreciate you spending some time with us, learning a little bit more about Grandstream Solutions. Hope everyone has a great weekend, and we hope to see you again soon. Take care.
Thank you.